To make it easier to follow along with the lesson, please reset your user settings or make sure your mouse presets are on the 3-button or regular mouse. If you do not know how to change your settings, please watch our UI video first. For those using Marvelous Designer 9.5 and above, we have grouped more tools together for a cleaner user interface. Please long press the left mouse button on the tool to view a list of all of the tools in the tool group. Welcome to the Marvelous Designer Basic Garments tutorials. In this tutorial, we are going to be making pleats. So first, I'm going to show you how to make 3 different types of pleats, and then we are going to be making a pleated skirt. So to begin, we are going to go ahead and turn off gravity. So in the 3D window, right-click, go to Simulation Properties, go to Gravity, and make that value 0. This will make it a little easier as we are doing our pleats just to see them and work with them in the 3D space, to understand how pleats work. Then we are going to create rectangles, which will become our pleats. So going up to the toolbar, long pressing the patterning tools, and choosing the rectangle tool or the S hotkey, then just dragging and creating a small little rectangle. Then swapping over to the transform pattern tool, I'm just copying and pasting, and then just pulling it down to make it a little bit longer so we know that this part is going to be the pleat and the above is going to be stationary. So normally pleats are 3 times the width of what they're sewing into. Sometimes they're not. We're just going to do 3 for now. So again, you can just measure this and then make a rectangle that's 3 times the width, or something a little bit easier, Control C, Control V, and we're just making 2 more to then make this 3 times the width. Swapping over to the Edit Pattern tool, we're just going to merge these vertical segment pieces by holding Shift to select the 2, right-click and choose Merge. This turns those segment lines into base lines, so you can always bring them back or use them later using the Trace tool. Again, merging this. So the Trace tool you can use to trace existing lines, including baselines, which you normally can't interact with. So if you want to use the Trace tool, you can just select it and hit Enter, and that creates an internal line. As well, you can just use the internal polygon tool, and then just create that line and hit Enter to finish. And then let's go ahead and right-click in the 3D window, the stationary pattern piece, and choose Freeze. And now you can see that we've merged those pattern pieces together. It's a little bit squiggly in the 3D window. Just go ahead and simulate for a second, and it'll get that piece right in place. So now, let's go ahead and apply fold directions. You can use the fold arrangement tool, which you have used in the color block shirt tutorial, but you can also just use the Edit Pattern tool to select the line, and just in the property editor, you can choose the fold angle here. So turning the fold angle to 0, let me zoom in, we'll make this line red. This means that this line is going to come towards the normal side, and making this 360, it turns it blue and it's going to push this fold towards the flipped normal. So if you simulate, you will see it's starting to fold. So let's turn off simulation. I'm going to rotate this for a little bit of a better visual. And this is why we generally want this to be 3 times the width of the actual line it's sewing into. We have the front, we have the folded piece, and then we have the back piece. So let's go ahead and sew those in. I'm going to be using the segment sewing tool because I do have those segment points. Just sewing them to each other, making sure the lines are straight. Because they are folded, I can double check my work. And then sewing the front to the frozen or stationary pattern piece. And then I'm going to go ahead and simulate. And now I have a knife pleat. Now you can see for some reason there is no gravity here, but it's a little bit curved. It's not a crisp, flat angle. You can check why this is happening by going to your Edit Sewing tool, highlighting all of those seams, and you can check your sewing line type and you can see the angle. Now for all of these seams, you want them to be turned. And if you simulate again, now it's nice and straight and crisp. So keep that in mind if you're having issues with some of your pleats. If you are doing them by hand, make sure all of your sewing lines are turned. So now that we have manually created a knife pleat, let's go ahead and create a box pleat, which is 2 knife pleats. To do this, we're just going to select both of these pattern pieces, copy, and then paste them. And I am going to freeze this just to make it simulate a little faster. And to create a box pleat, this will be 2 knife pleats facing each other. So I need to lengthen this, or in this case, unfold. So I'm choosing right click, unfold, and unfold both of them. So shifting over. I will also right click and reset the 2D arrangement of this lower pattern piece. And going to the Edit Sewing tool, I am deleting this because I'm going to show you how to use the pleat tools to create these pleats now. So we have, in the 2D window, we have the Pleats Fold tool, and we have the Pleat Sewing tool. So for the Pleats Fold tool, we'll select that, select all of those internal lines we want to turn into pleats, and this brings up the Pleats Fold pop-up window. We have knife pleats, which you just made manually, we have box pleats, and we have accordion pleats. So we will be doing a box pleat, which is 2 knife pleats together. We can see here a little cheat sheet, so this little red shows the outside fold and blue shows the inside fold. So with this arrangement, the red is going to be on the outside and the blue is going to be on the inside. So we're going to have the pleat on the back. So I want to change that, and I'm just going to select reverse direction. So this is going to be on the outside and it's going to come towards us, and the blue is going to be in the back. And the number of pleat lines per pleat, 2, because we only have 2, 1, 2. And I'm going to select OK. And then we have the Pleat Sewing tool. When using the Pleat Sewing tool, make sure that your internal lines or your fold lines have segment points on the end of them. If the internal lines do not have segment points on the end of them, the Pleat Sewing tool will not work appropriately. So, using the Pleat Sewing tool, we select what we're sewing into first, and then we select the lines that are sewing into it. So this has the 1, 2, 3, so this is first segment, and second segment. And to make it a little easier in the 3D window, I am going to right click and strengthen this lower pattern piece, and then I'm going to simulate. Let it settle. And there is our box pleat. We have 2 mirrored knife pleats. And let's go ahead and create our last pleat. And let's go ahead and create our last pleat. Again, I'm just selecting them both and copying. And then paste. And then I'm just going to freeze this. And in this case, I am also deleting all of these. In this case, I'm deleting all of the sewing lines, as well as all of these internal lines. And if these baselines bother you, if the baselines bother you, you can delete them using the trace tool. Select them and delete. Just remember that there are 2 because the 2 faces joined. So now that I have a clean pattern, I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger because we're going to be making an accordion pleat. And it doesn't have to sew in perfectly. It doesn't have to be in thirds, so it doesn't matter. In fact, the more volume, the more fun. So to create these pleats, I'm going to start by creating my internal lines by selecting both of the vertical segment lines, right-clicking and choosing Offset as internal line along a curve. So with this tool, you can use it to create gradient lines. If there's a curve on one point and if there's a straight line along the other, it'll actually create gradiating lines. But I like to use this to create my pleats and have the perfect offset. So I'm going to go ahead and do 40 because it doesn't really matter the number in this case. I have 40 little lines. Let's see how 50 looks. Yeah, 50 looks nice. Making sure they're straight. Okay. Now while they're selected, I always like to double check by right-clicking, extend, trim, and add point to pattern outline. And then let's go ahead and use the pleat pattern tool. And let's go ahead and use the pleats fold tool. Select all those internal lines and double click to finish. Choose accordion pleats and select OK. And we are not going to be using the pleats fold tool because it's accordion pleats. We are just going to use the free sewing tool and just sew it right in. And then in the 3D window, since it's a copy, we're just going to reset that, adjust it, and then simulate. And have it sew in. Now to get a better look, let's go ahead and turn gravity back on by right-clicking in the 3D window, choosing simulation properties and bringing gravity back, which is -9800. And now we have our accordion pleats. There we go. And now we have our 3 pleats. So we have the accordion pleat, just accordions together. You see a lot of skirts like this. We have our box pleat, which is on a lot of shirts as a shirt pleat. And then lastly, we have our knife pleat. So now that we've covered creating basic pleats, let's go ahead and create a pleated skirt next. I've opened a new project file, so I'm going to go ahead and go to Library, Avatar, and I'm going to choose an avatar to bring in. So I'm choosing female B and double clicking her to bring her into the workspace. And then I'm going to close that library tab. Then to make simulation of pleats easier, I am right-clicking in the 3D window, going down to Simulation Properties, going to Gravity and making that value 0. Again, this is to make those pleats easier to create. Then let's go ahead and zoom in on the avatar shadow. We're going to make her waistband or the solitary pattern piece. I'm long pressing and choosing the rectangle tool and making it a little bit bigger than her actual waist is going to be. And again, this is only on the half, so I'm using the Edit Pattern tool to unfold the waistband, and then turning on the arrangement points and placing it on her waist. And then using the segment sewing tool and just sewing that together. Turning off the arrangement points and simulating. Now it's not going to be in the perfect spot because gravity is off currently, so this is fine. Go ahead and right-click and freeze this. And then we can start creating our skirt portion. So I'm going to use the Edit Pattern tool. Select 1/2 of the lines because we are going to be working on the half. The measurement here is 340.9, so I'm just going to remember that number. Go up to the Pattern Tools and choose Rectangle. Click once to bring up the pop-up window and input 340.9 for me. Yours might be a little different, so input whatever that width was. And we'll keep it at 500 millimeters because we can always lengthen or shorten this quite easily afterwards. Selecting OK. And then the same rule applies. We do need this to be 3 times as wide. Again, you could have done math if you wanted. I'm just going to do the same method I showed you the first time. So I'm just going to copy and paste the same, and then just merge them. And then in this case, I'm going to use the trace tool, and I'm just going to delete all of those points. So I have a clean rectangle that is 3 times the width of what it is sewing into. Now let's go ahead and make those pleats. Similar to the accordion pleats method, I am selecting the 2 vertical segment lines, right-clicking and choosing offset as internal line along a curve. Now, we are going to go by the rule of 3s, but because this is going to be duplicated on another side, we're just going to subtract 1 from that. So let's just say I wanted 30. I'm going to do 29 because it's going to be continued on the other half. So I have 29 offsets, straight line, and OK. Now I always like to double check by right-clicking those lines as they're selected and choosing extend or trim and add point to pattern outline. This way I have my segment points, and it will make it easier to use the segment sewing tool to create those pleats. Now that we have our internal lines, let's go ahead and use the Pleats Fold tool. Selecting once, double-clicking to finish after crossing all of those lines. And we are doing knife pleats, so we want to double check. We want to have 3 lines per pleat in this case. We want to have 3 lines for the pleats in this case, for the front, the fold portion, and the back, to then continue that. So I'm going to select OK. And before I simulate this, I am strengthening it again. And then I'm going to simulate. So it rests in place. And then I'm going to turn simulation off and just move it so it's a little closer to the avatar. The closer it is, the less whiplash we have, and the easier it will be to rest in place. Then going over and using the Pleats sewing tool, selecting just the 1/2 of the segment, and then selecting all of my pleats, double checking that it looks good here, and then simulating. So it's nice and in place. And then let's go ahead and make that other half. I'm just going to move this to the left. And I'm just doing copy and paste. And I am going to delete the sewing that's been applied because it is a copy, using the Edit Sewing tool. Just hitting delete. And I'm going to rotate this so it's going in the correct direction, because we are just continuing them. Making sure. And then we're just going to do the same thing, following the same direction with the Pleat sewing tool, and then using the segment sewing tool to sew the fronts and the backs together. And don't forget to right click, strengthen, and then simulate. And then it looks a little puffy now, it's going to be fine. Right click, unstrengthen. And now we can turn gravity back on by right-clicking in the 3D window, going to Simulation, and applying gravity, -9800, hitting Enter. There we go. And lastly, unfreezing the waistband so it does fall down. And I will make this a little stronger by selecting this and going to the property editor, by going down to bond and skive and just selecting bond, simulate, and it gives it a little more strength. Because normally a waistband would be like this flat anyway. You can pull it if you don't like it up at her waist. It's up to you. And if you want this to be longer, I'm going to turn off simulation. I can go ahead and select them both and then just make them as long as I want. Simulate again. And now we have a long skirt. You can save this as a skirt if you would like by going up to File, Save As, Garments, and going to Desktop, Basic Garments. I'm just going to save this as Finished Garment and save it as Pleat, Pleated Skirt. If you wanted to add fabric to it, we can go ahead and go to Library Fabric, and you can add whatever you want. Let's go ahead and just do charmeuse, because that drapes really well. And close. And simulate again. Let's change the color of our fabric by going up to the object browser, selecting that fabric and choosing color, and choosing green. You can choose whichever color you would like. And apply that to the waistband as well. If you find that the bonding is not enough, we can right-click the waistband and choose Strengthen. And that is the finished skirt, so let's go ahead and save this as a garment by going up to File, then Save As, and Garment. Saving in my Finished Garments folder, and saving it as Pleated Skirt. And that is how to create basic pleats and a knife pleat skirt. Thank you for watching, and follow the links here to the next lessons. If you liked this video, hit the like button below and subscribe for more. If you have any questions about getting started in Marvelous Designer or this lesson, please leave a comment below and we will do our best to answer your questions. If you want more information on Marvelous Designer, check out our website, forum, and official Discord channels, which are all linked in the description box below.